Dear diarrhea, diarrhea full of shit. Just play along, me, myself, and I. No one else. I'm so legit. I saved a few videos in all four public folders. Amen. Drop the mic 2. Weak people make hard, stupid times. AI, and equals bad, or whatever. I got a lot of traffic on my channel, so whatever. And the more far spread you make shit. Not to be a bitch, because I know that's a thing. Like people who do have channels, they'll pump out a bunch of the same videos just with different titles or thumbnails, or one's a little longer or shorter, to get traffic. So I guess I'm just being a bitch, taking up bandwidth and all that magic air, radio waves. But yeah, it's over. Especially the part where all the elites, and not only the elites, because it seems like they would anyway, but the people who, the CEOs of all these AI companies, which would be considered the elites, are building bunkers, because I guess they figure, AI could really fuck shit up, and launch nukes and whatever the hell. I've got a bunch of other videos that I need to watch yet, but I'm thinking this might be it. The end of the world has been right around the corner for many corners, but eventually one of those corners is going to be the legitimate corner. So this might be it. So get your affairs in order. Get right with God. I was going to say, when I say get your affairs in order, I guess it wouldn't really matter, if humanity's going to end. Like have your shit allocated, So, who it goes to and how things are handled and whatnot. But I guess if it's a mass human extinction event, I guess none of that matters. But so just one of those things, man. The world is doing it, so America has to do it too. So, we quote unquote win the race. And I agree. But it's just gonna fuck things all up, man. So, Katie Boo, don't feel bad about, being too old to have a kid, or at least a healthy kid. And not being able to find a man to spend the rest of your life with, at the very least, just for companionship. Because it's all gonna fucking end anyway. These videos. Just go, yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and summarize it. But yeah, apparently it has the ability to, like self-teach itself. And figure things out, and the blackmail, and it's scary stuff. And of course the people, there's a lot of greed involved. On the AI level, they're going to be trillionaires, and company owners, they're going to be millionaires, because they get to fire all their employees. So greed plays a big part of it. I'm really kind of going on a bender, on this religious stuff, But, and I stand behind that. You know, there's way more to it than we know. I think that. And I think it's really like mass sprawling, you know. Turns out it might actually be, you know, a battle for your soul, you know. It's not just sort of this in the background, oh, I think I'll pick up Christianity and, you know, casually walk with the ball, you know. It's like, apparently there might literally be, you know, forces at work that have the ability to affect how you feel and think and, you know, move, you know, objects, the spiritual world, you know, hauntings and stuff like that. And I've talked about that a little bit. The rehab facility that I stayed at was supposedly haunted. They would say, you know, occasionally lights would turn on and off. You would hear footsteps. Shememe actually saw a shadow. It was just like a shadow, not a shadow person, but it was like a shadow on the wall. And it was like an old school, it was like a female shadow, I guess she thought, and it had like the old hairdo that was like kind of up, fluffy, like a beehive hairdo. And it freaked her out to the point where she ran out of the room. So, and then of course my stupid ass was like, did you know, I don't know how it came up, but I'm like, did you know you can communicate with, you know, the paranormal, but it has to be on their terms? And the very last day, my fan that I had in my room, it shut off, and then it turned back on. And I asked anybody, I said, did anybody flip the breaker? Did it pop on its own, or did somebody flip it to like do some work or something? Said no. So, and that doesn't freak me out, you know, that there's entities that are for or against you. There's entities that are constantly watching every, you know, moment, and it's like this thing that can't even be explained. You know, it never shuts off. So, like I said, I pity, you know, parents and stuff who have to explain that to a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old. Well, they wouldn't explain it at that level, and they wouldn't explain it like that, instilling the word, you know. There's a lot of tough, you know, teachings that you have to do as a parent, and conversations that you have to have, like the birds and the bees conversation about sex. What? That's easy. This is what you do. This is the good things that can happen. These are the bad things that can happen. If you do it irresponsibly, you can get in trouble legally. You can get in trouble sexual disease. You can get false accusations. It can be weaponized against you. You can get unplanned pregnancies. You know, that shit, that's fucking easy, man. In my opinion, it's the religion talk that's the one that's, you need to instill it early and have it be a lifelong, you know, journey. But you need to instill it right. You don't want to raise no goddamn fundamentalists now. You know? Because even as a kid, like in elementary school, you know, you'd get some kid who went to church for the first time and was like, oh yeah, JC's got my back and blah. And they're spewing their dumb kid shit. Evil this, good that. Light, dark, right, wrong, you know. And they're kids. They're dumb, they're stupid, they don't know shit. You know, and at church, you're surrounded by people who are dumb, stupid, and don't know shit. And the pastors, most of them are just dumb, stupid shits that don't know shit. You know, they have a degree in theology or whatever, you know, so they just sort of spew, regurgitate shit, you know, but do they actually really understand it? That's why, like, I don't like to listen to the fire and brimstone, you know, y'all be ashamed that you don't go to church 3 times a week, you know, people, because it's like, you fuck off, you know. Alistair Begg was a guy, that, at least back then, unless he's changed, if he's still doing things even, for some reason he sat right with me, and I'll have to, you know, I've got my plan, and like I said, I rounded a corner. And I'm talking about this in case anybody listens to this, you know, maybe it would help them, kind of pursue that path, because like I said, and maybe this is all timing, I don't know, maybe, human beings are going to successfully saw off the branch that they're sitting on because of technology. It's like I said, the end of the world is going to happen, Then you got your fundamentalists, who are like, well, it was all supposed to happen, so just relax. Okay, fine, whatever, but yeah, you might want to make sure you're fucking, if you got some unresolved issues or bitterness or hatred or anger or jealousy or any of that nasty fucking shit, because that's like what evil is the complete, opposite, of good. So, good, religion and stuff is like, of sound mind and no anxiety and no fear and stuff like that. But humans have fear and anxiety, like Katie Boo, she's a good Christian girl. I suspect that she's probably the type of girl who her parents made her go to church, 2 or 3 times a week, and she's one of these whack jobs. Okay? Keep the whack jobs at a fucking distance. Just shut up. I don't want to listen to anything they have to say, because they tend to be, did you pray today? No. Then you're going to hell. Oh, okay. Have a good day. Get the fuck out of here. I don't want to talk to you. So, you're a nuisance. So, anyway, you're not preaching the word. All you do is condemn people. Condemn. Just get the fuck going. It's more complicated than that. You know what I mean? But, and like I said, I kind of feel, I have a different feel these days. Like I said, I'm kind of almost calmer. I'm more stoic, especially like now that I'm driving and stuff, like with people and stuff. Not that I was really an issue anyway, but, something has changed in me, and I did not make that effort. Like, even with the drinking, I don't know if it's the over the road thing, but I figured, okay, this is some shit, I've got like a decent time, I'll go ahead and do the drinking thing. I'll probably still drink on occasion, but very rarely. Now that might be because of my schedule, like with the working out and stuff, on the road, the 100 push-ups and this, that, and the other, and my nutrition. That's all stuff that is, workable. The cardio is going to be the biggest, the hardest to accomplish, but it's still totally accomplishable. The weights are easy. That's just, like I said, every 2 or 3 hours, just crank out some reps. So, and the way that I do it, and I do it properly and all that stuff, but I'm not going to talk about that. 13 and a half minutes in, I kind of went down this, well, first I shouted out to AI and the literal end of the world, be it nukes, robots that go rogue, and just, I don't know, like there's this one video that I still need to watch. It said AI will treat humans like chickens. I don't know how this is going to work, but it turns out they are actually building, like bipedal robots that are going to be equipped with AI. And they're going to, like I said, that's AI's role in life, is to replace humans. Their jobs, the army, they have drones and, little tracked vehicles to get, find explosives and stuff. But, this is bipedal robots, with weapons and stuff. And it's like, holy fucking shit. And the Alibabi experiment or whatever, where it's like, the fail-safe. It seems like they did that with some sort of drone. I mentioned it like 3 years ago, where, that's one of the things, is it doesn't have a kill switch. It doesn't, it learns on its own and it adapts. It's not a VCR or a calculator or even the internet, it's like, it's a runaway. So shit, motherfucker. So anyway, me personally, like I said, I've always kind of been I'm not a nihilist, but I just don't get wrapped up in shit. I'm not really passionate about anything. I don't really get bothered by anything. It's like I'm kind of flatline across the board. You know, I don't have a lot of ups. I don't have a lot of downs. But like I said, I am kind of a different person now, and I made no effort. So I guess I should be thankful for that, because just all of a sudden I kind of feel different. So, I'm listening to that. I'm paying attention. And like I said, that religious stuff, and the radio coming on its own, and it's like, yeah. So, believe it or don't believe it, love it or hate it, fear it, love it, don't, indifferent, I'm not really, indifferent isn't really the word. It's like, well, you got my attention now. But, can't not. And I've always known there was more to reality, just the supernatural world and shit like that. Yeah. Good times. Enjoy the fucking ride.